So I thought it'd be cool to do a talking video while me and the kid are on a nature walk. That way there's a little bit of an interesting background. Hopefully she lets us get through the video without too much yelling, but I think she'll be entertained here, a lot to look at. So today I'm going to be comparing the top 5 most popular lifting sports or paradigms, specifically with their benefits to natural athletes. I'm going to be ranking them in terms of worst to best. The first 2 I consider to be relatively bad choices. Not that, no one should do them. I think it's definitely better to do them than to do nothing, not get any kind of exercise in. But I think overall they're net negative on lifting culture, and I'll explain why. Then the last 3 I think are net positives. I think they're all great choices, but there are pros and cons, which I'll explain. Okay, let's get started. The worst on this list for natural athletes is going to be natural bodybuilding. So let's get into the training. When I talk about bodybuilding training, I'm mostly referring to a training style that involves a lot of isolation exercises and machine work. That's primarily what bodybuilders do a lot of. They do some limited compound exercises, but mostly they do, a lot of isolation work. They hit a lot of muscles that they just aren't hitting with their compound exercises. And frankly, this just does not seem to be very effective at putting mass on natural athletes. It's fantastic for targeting exactly where you want to grow in enhanced athletes. You can make yourself look exactly like a cartoon character, just grow exactly what you want, grow nothing else with the isolation exercises. And that seems to work really well when you start adding drugs to the equation, but it doesn't seem to work very well for naturals. I mean, that's why you saw that training style of isolation work gain popularity as soon as drugs hit the scene in the 60s. And it worked really well for that purpose. But now you have people that are basically training as if they're steroid using athletes, but they forgot the steroids. And if that's all they do, they tend to stay pretty small. Now, some of them also compete in powerlifting, add some, heavy lifting there. That I would say that just kind of acknowledges the inherent weaknesses of bodybuilding as it's currently practiced for natural athletes. Now, back in the day, there was natural bodybuilding that was very positive. These guys got really great physiques, looked really good, but they were training in a very different way from what natural bodybuilders do now, so I'm not referring to that. The second issue with natural bodybuilding is the judging standards. It seems that for whatever reason, naturals have said, okay, if we can't have the size of the enhanced athletes, we'll at least get the leanness. So they all try to get striated glutes and just get as shredded as possible, and they all end up looking like stick figures. Well, if you look at natural bodybuilding in the pre-drug era, it wasn't like that. It was more of a calculation. Do you look better with maybe a little bit more body fat, a little bit smoother, but definitely more full? Like somebody like Clancy Ross comes to mind here. Somebody who's definitely not as lean as the competitors today, but just look massive, look like a bodybuilder, And that would be a more positive ideal for natural bodybuilding, but that's not the judging standard today. If you could come in looking massive like Clancy Ross and actually win a competition, that'd be great. But even if he stepped on stage today, he'd lose because he doesn't have striated glutes, which is ridiculous. Okay, moving on. The next, the 4th ranked, next worst is powerlifting. This is probably going to piss a lot of people off, but powerlifting and its consequences have been a disaster for lifting culture, at least for natural athletes. So powerlifting obsessively focuses on 3 exercises that, quite frankly, the ceiling is not going to be that high for with natural athletes. Most natural athletes, most natural men will say, are going to peak out somewhere between let's say 300 and 450 bench, 400 and 600 squat, 400, 700 deadlift. Huge range, but you're going to have some outliers, but for the most part, you're going to peak out in that area. And frankly, you'll probably peak out relatively quickly. These exercises to really see a whole lot of growth and a whole lot of enhancement of that, you're going to need more muscle mass than naturals are going to get. So honestly, natural athletes are going to peak out very quickly in those lifts. And that's why they weren't popular in the pre-steroid era, really. Powerlifting took off when drugs took off. These exercises were definitely known back in the day. They certainly knew about deadlifting and squatting. bench press relatively early on too. They had also floor press, if you know, well before bench pressing. So none of this was unknown. It's not like they couldn't have figured out, you know, how to, you know, make a squat rack, and they had Steinbrenn squats. I mean, all these exercises were known, but they weren't preferred as competition lifts. A, because they're not that cool, but B, because, you know, everyone's going to peak out in a relatively similar area. You're not going to, you know, see dramatic enhancement. You really need more variety. The maximized natural lifter is going to be somebody that's really just become a generalist, someone who's really learned a bunch of lifts and has actually, you know, developed in a lot of different areas, not just 3 lifts. Which brings me to my next point, which is powerlifting for naturals does not develop a balanced physique. Bench press, squat, and deadlift in no way will give you a balanced muscular physique. You're missing a lot in the shoulder area and the back area. For starters, you could probably use more calf development, things of that nature from other exercises. Basically, powerlifters, do the squat, bench, and deadlift, and then supposedly they're going to be doing some assistance exercises. You know, do they always even do them? No, but even if they do, they're mostly, you know, lightweight bodybuilding style exercises like face pulls. Now, I mean, do you really think a face pull is going to counteract, you know, 300-pound benches every day? No, there's no way. You're not going to get balance from, you know, the heavy power lifts plus some light assistance exercises, even if you actually do them, which a lot of power lifters don't. Okay, so that concludes the ones that I think are overall bad influences on lifting culture today. Now let's move into the positive ones. The first one on this list, lowest ranking, but by no means bad, by no means a bad choice, is Olympic lifting. Now, I think the 2 Olympic lifts by themselves, the clean and jerk and the snatch, honestly provide a whole lot of potential for good balanced muscular development all by themselves. You can get a lot of ground just out of those 2. And unlike the powerlifters, I have to say Olympic lifters have a good program of assistance lifts that I think they actually do, and a lot of their assistance lifts are not, you know, light bodybuilding style isolation exercises. They're actually good compound lifts in their own right. So, you know, honestly, Olympic lifting is a great way to build a balanced functional physique with a lot of flexibility, mobility, things of that nature built in. Nothing really bad to say about it, just that it's kind of boring to just focus on 2 lifts. You know, it might be a little bit higher ranked. If it was back in the day, we still had the press or something. But ultimately, just the kind of narrow scope of it is what's keeping it ranked 3. Even though, I mean, you really did pick two of the best exercises you possibly could pick. Okay, moving on to number 2, second place position. It's going to be modern strongman. Modern strongman is great. I mean, you're picking up rocks, picking up logs, picking up this, picking up that, deadlifting, overhead pressing, carrying, all sorts of great functional training. I mean, not only that, it's cool. People like watching it. It actually fills stadiums, unlike most lifting sports. So modern strongman is very cool. Very good choice. I definitely recommend it for anyone, including natural athletes. Now, there are some downsides to it. As with powerlifting, modern strongman is very deadlift and overhead pressing intensive, and ultimately there are going to be some limitations on, you know, your max deadlift. You're not just going to be able to, the natural guys aren't going to be out there pulling over 1,000 pounds like the enhanced lifters, and that because of how focused modern strongman still is on the same movements, just kind of with different implements, you do still end up at a point where you're gonna run into the wall in terms of progress on a lot of this stuff. And the second issue that I have with modern strongman is, I guess the idea of it is, okay, we're not just going to be like the Olympic lifters or power lifters where we just specialize exclusively on techniques that allow us to optimize the maximal weight on a specific lift, but no one knows exactly how much that transfers over to anything else. The idea is we're going to be able to lift anything anyhow, right? But in practice, it doesn't work that way. In practice, they are still teaching to the test, studying for the test, so to speak. Instead of just being able to lift anything, anytime, all it really means is you actually just have to practice with a whole bunch more implements specifically. So you're not just coming into it cold. What are they going to throw at me today? Some odd object out of a junkyard. Now you're going to have to practice with this type of Atlas stone, this type of log implement, not a log out of the forest. It's like a specific implement, usually from, manufactured by somebody. And at the end of the day, to get really good at it, you do have to do a whole lot of implement specific training, get a lot of practice in on very specific implements and the skills therein. And obviously you need access to that stuff, so either you're gonna have to spend a whole lot of money buying this stuff, or you're gonna have to go to a strongman gym, which are relatively hard to find. Not the end of the world, but I would like it better if you went to a strongman competition and they literally did just like scour junkyards to see what they could find. So it really is something just random, and you actually haven't practiced for it. You actually just have to have the skill of just assessing a new object and, picking it up. But overall, strongman is a great choice. I'm never going to bash it. But there's one choice that I think is a better option for natural athletes specifically, and that is our winner of the day, CrossFit. This may surprise some people. CrossFit gets a lot of heat, but honestly, I think of the most popular paradigms, CrossFit is actually the best for natural athletes. So basically, it combines the best aspects of powerlifting and Olympic lifting with gymnastics. And when you have the Olympic lifting and the gymnastics together, now you're really getting potential for a complete balanced development. That really fills in a lot of holes right there. And then obviously they do the powerlifting exercises too, and they're starting to incorporate some strongman stuff, although they need to do more of that. Whether you care about fitness or not, I don't know, but honestly, the challenges of CrossFit are probably more suited to the natural athlete, who's probably going to do better where, you're expected to deadlift, 500 pounds or something, and also be fit than, strongman, where you might have to deadlift 700, and a lot of people just aren't going to be able to do that no matter what. So I think it's a challenge that's more suited to natural athletes. And obviously the CrossFitters are quite strong. They're quite strong and in a much more varied way than the other people. They're good at Olympic lifting. They're doing some good gymnastic stuff. Not as good at any one thing, but still extremely strong and overall more balanced development than really probably anyone else. Now, I definitely have some criticisms of CrossFit. I don't think it's perfect. My biggest criticism is I think they overcomplicate the cardio and undercomplicate the lifting. I don't see why you need to be able to run on multiple different treadmills, different types of stationary bicycle. There seems to be a lot of junk conditioning that doesn't really specifically train anything that you couldn't train otherwise. And the lifting is a lot more general. Like, why don't they include searcher squats or more, single arm Olympic lifts, more unilateral work? There's a lot of lifting stuff that they could add that would actually benefit a lot more, I think, than some of their variety in cardio. I think a lot of that is what I call the fitness industrial complex. Just like with strongman, manufacturers want to be able to sell that special treadmill, all the special implements, and if you just do more different stuff with the same barbell, no one gets to sell any more products. So I think the top two on this list are definitely, victims of that. It's things that don't need to be or overly complicated in order to sell products. But regardless, combining everything, gymnastics, Olympic lifting, and powerlifting, I think is going to overall give you the most balanced development. Now, there are a couple things that I didn't cover on this list. A big one that's gaining popularity is kettlebell sport. Looks really good. I see a lot of really good things coming out of that, but it's not that popular yet. Obviously, you've got the street workouts, bar workouts, gymnastic stuff. Again, a lot of good stuff there, but not quite as popular yet. What I honestly think would have the potential to be the best would be all-around weightlifting, like USAWA, which has I think a list of 100 lifts that you could do, but they have zero popularity. They have maybe 3 gyms in the world, so not really a valid option. Obviously, I'd like to see some form of lifting that adds more variety, but you know, maybe not with a million different implements, maybe more variety with the same basic implements. I think that'd be optimal, but that doesn't really seem to be an option right now. So for right now, I would say CrossFit is best, but you can't go wrong with modern strongman or Olympic lifting either. All right, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed all the nature, and I hope the occasional whining didn't interrupt the video too much.